Hello everyone, it's Henry here. I've been away from my channel now for almost 2 years, certainly a year and a half. And so I thought I'd reconnect with you, those of you that are still watching, and explain what's happened and what I'm going to do. So I had some disappointing events happen at work, and so I decided to leave a couple of years earlier than I was going to. And that meant that we sold our home and relocated. And to do so, with the in-between phases, we lived in our RV for 227 days. And the Seabreeze RV that you've seen in my videos up to now was 22 years old and was showing its age, unfortunately. And I ended up with some electrical problems with it, and my wife correctly felt that that vehicle wasn't up to the demands of living full-time and my wife having to work out of the RV. So she called around, and within just hours found a similar RV, only much newer, about 50 or so kilometers from our home. And so we moved very quickly. I think we saw it that night around 6 or 7 o'clock, and by 2 or 3 o'clock the next afternoon we had already made the arrangements. And I had so I had to take everything out of Seabreeze and then drive up just with the Seabreeze and ultimately make the arrangements financially so that we could pick it up. And what we bought was a Forest River Georgetown GT5 31L5. Now I'm going to give a tour of that RV in a separate video, but I will say off the surface, I love the colors and how that makes me feel. We had been in a GT7 and we were not impressed with it, and it was very expensive too for what we felt they were asking, what we were getting for it. But this one, it seemed to have pretty good reviews, and we've been able to live in it fine. And one of the nice things after driving older RVs for years and slaving over rusty parts and so forth is this RV, at least so far, knock on wood, has run beautifully. And the biggest challenge has been just some pretty trivial maintenance issues that I was able to resolve. And so I'm pretty happy with it. And now that we're in our new home and, you know, living the life is stabilized again, we'll be doing and have done some trips. So where does my channel go from here? I found videoing the trips themselves to be laborious, and a lot of times when you're traveling with an RV, you're time sensitive or you're busy with something else, and the last thing you really want to do is make more videos. Now that sounds selfish, and perhaps it is, but I wanted to find a balance of what I could do on my channel that would be fun for me and hopefully for my viewers, but at the same time not be a job, so to speak. And so what I'm going to be doing over the next while is more a matter of talking about the different aspects of RVing that come to mind. And there may not be too much over the winter, as nothing much is happening. But I've got 3 or 4 planned over the next short period of time to bring things up to the mark. And hopefully this is interesting for you. RVing is probably my favorite hobby. I love the versatility of these vehicles and where you can go with them, how you can live in them. You take, you know, your cottage with you where you go, and it's really wonderful to be able to travel somewhere and visit people you care about, or visit places that interest you, and you have all the comforts of home, and it's really wonderful. So the other thing that I've been doing, so the videos that are coming, So I'll do the tour as I mentioned, and then I put a solar system on here, and I'll explain what I did and the rationale for it and so on. And then finally, the boondocking type thing. Now, here in Southern Ontario, Southern Northern / Central Ontario, there's not a lot of opportunity for boondocking the way you might have it, say, in the Western United States or in the Western parts of Canada. You're not going to pull off into a wilderness area and park for a week and have a great time and go home, and that's not permitted. Or if it is, it's pretty rare, and most of the time you end up having to arrange with someone, or the access roads aren't up to the mark for a larger RV, whatever the math is. However, what one can do is when you're traveling, of course, stopping at Walmarts or something like that along the way, but also when you're staying at parks, sometimes, of course, there are nice sites and large sites that are away from the power group, and they're quieter often. And if your RV is configured to last for a few days at least without having to need the assistance of it, then you maybe have a nicer experience. It's slightly cheaper, not as much as I'd like it to be honest with you, but slightly cheaper. So I think that so I'm going to certainly come over with my thinking of how I've approached the boondocking thing. And what I've done with our RV here is, the idea is to see how well we can do for 7 days. So the idea is that 2 people for 7 days. And I'm kind of a purist when it comes to this. So when I say boondocking, there's no water brought in, there's no dumping, there's no, I have an auxiliary gray water tank, and gray water is usually the thing that we overflow on anyway. I can use that to extend my gray water, for example. But I also feel that, and you can use the generator, but only if it's allowed by the statutes in that area. That would be acceptable too. You have the solar, so you have the garbage and the water usage and so on. All that is part of the math here. And it's an interesting problem, because there's lots of things, because you want to still live the same way, right? So I found that quite interesting. So hopefully you'll enjoy how I've treated that. So the last trip I did, and maybe I can throw a video together for it. I did in 2020, and with the COVID situation, there was the parks here in Ontario were closed for almost until July, I think it was, and so there was some issues there. And but I went to Restoule Provincial Park and hiked and canoed there, so I'll see if I can throw together something for that for everyone. And then in 2021, and these are just the wilderness trips, obviously the fan trips aren't going to be on YouTube, but so I went to Martin River Provincial Park and did some things there. I can't remember how much video I made there, but we'll see. I also had a wonderful week at Samuel de Champlain Park, canoe down the Mattawa, down in the tracks, if you will, of the fur traders, which was pretty amazing. It was a wonderful day, and the hiking there is amazing too. It's pretty tough, but it's nice. So I did that trip as well, and I think those were the primary wilderness trips for 2021 or 2020. This year, 22. Going forward, next year, I think Martin River is a very fine. It's closer to where I live, so I can go up to that park and not have to go too far, spend too much money, and have a good 3 or 4 or 5 days of doing some wilderness stuff, but also testing the vehicle, making sure it's all ready to go for whatever the summer is. And then I also thought of, so the 2 that I want to do that are kind of destination campgrounds. One is Halfway Lake, which is up on Highway 144 north of Sudbury. And this park has, it's more of a, it's pretty wilderness park. So there's some really good hiking in there, some excellent trails, and may well be some cycling on 144. Some of these northern roads aren't used extensively, and it could work pretty well, I hope. And there may well be a little bit of canoeing in the lake there. Another place that I've always thought of going is the Mississauga Provincial Park, which is a bit further for us. It's north of Elliott Lake, and there's no power there. So there's one campsite that has a bit more sun to help with the solar to extend the stay. And that, so I'm going to have to kind of look ahead for that one and see if I can book it when I want to. It's about 280K for me. And so as a consequence, I want to make sure that, if I go there, I'm there for, a week or so, so I'm going to be able to get, the value out of the drive. And so those are the two destination campgrounds. I could see myself returning to Restoule too. There's some excellent paddling there, and I certainly didn't do it all in 21 or 20 rather. Also, Finlayson Point up in Temagami also has some, you got onto the Lake Temagami, as long as it's not too windy. That's certainly a fine place as well. And there's also the White Bear Forest hiking trails, which are accessible right across the road from Finlayson Point. So there's some good stuff there as well. So those are kind of the plan, and then hopefully some other things will happen as well, and that we'll get into things. I think also this year we were still finishing the house, so there's a lot of obligations on my time that took away from going away. And I think the other thing that happens, I suspect a lot of people, is that we built this house and we really like it, and so as a consequence, we enjoy just being here. And there's a little less of the escapism that maybe happens when you're working for a living and closer to the city. And so that's kind of where we're going here. And so what I'll do is I'll do the tour of the RV for you. That'll probably be the next video, and talk a bit about, we'll show you what's in the RV, and at the same time show you the some things that I'm hoping to do to make it a bit nicer and all the rest of it. But in general, it's been very fine to work in here and to manage it. It is, I will say that the final point, I guess, is that living in this RV for 227 days, we started in July, which was okay, and we ended up in the last day, it was the 17th of February, and we moved north from the Toronto area to central Ontario, and so we were dealing with temperatures of -20 and -30 living in this RV, and we still have full water. So it was a real challenge. I know this is not to take anything against this RV. These vehicles are not designed for that kind of use, and at the same time, had we lost the ability to live in the RV, we would have been pretty stuck as to where we'd have to stay and how that money, the economics of that would have worked. So what I did, the propane in the north, there is very, very limited auto propane. It's just a bit of a challenge for people with RVs who have to have their tanks filled. It's a bit different than, say, a trailer where you can take the cans to Canadian Tire or something like that and get them filled there. And so as a consequence, we decided that with the weather closing in, that we would no longer heat with propane. We'd heat the water in the water tank, which takes comparatively little propane, and it would last for a while. And that we would use electric heat. And by then, the house was on its way to being finished, and we had a temporary panel outside, and we also could run wires through the windows into the house. So it was a ridiculous arrangement, but it worked. So I had 1,500 watt heaters up the middle of the floor here, and I had a number of the little 250 watt heaters that you use on your desk when your boss doesn't heat the room enough. And I put those in the different compartments to keep the water from freezing, and it worked pretty well. And I had bought a thermometer off the internet that had 3 channels, so I could put these remote sensors in the different compartments and see just what was going on, and knew when we got into trouble. And it worked really well. You know, I was terrified that we're going to have a failure, because we not only had to heat the water, we had to heat the sump as well, because otherwise your drain valves will freeze and you can crack those pipes, and that's more trouble than anybody wants to deal with. So thankfully, the only thing that happened to us was that the external tap on the external shower failed. Now, I almost never use that anyway, so I just capped it off and didn't worry about it. And it's still like that right now. But other than that, we got through it, and so it was a miracle. And it's a testament to the vehicle in its own right. The appliances in here have worked really well, and I'm very pleased, you know, that we got through that. And my wife was certainly right that we had to upgrade our RV if we were going to do this type of thing and live in it that long under those temperature conditions. Because it's one thing to live in an RV, and it's another thing to live in it when, you know, there's 50 or more Celsius degrees between, and the wall's only, you know, 2 inches thick or whatever, and the windows are, you know, maybe double pane in some places. But so that's my story right now. That's where we're headed, where we've gone to. And like I said, so it'll be a little less trip oriented, although I'll put those in when I have decent resources. But then I'll probably talk to you a bit more about other aspects of RVing as it fits in. Anyhow, I like to say hello, and again, thank you for any of you that are still following my channel after being away so long. Good to talk to you, and have a nice day.